Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to your MN51 notes, where we're going to talk about surface area and volume of spheres. Put my 51 up here. This is associated with section 12.6 in your textbook, and you'll see this beautiful 3D figure on the left-hand side, which is a sphere. Notice that from the center of that sphere out is the radius. I am going to mention that the belt line of the sphere, right around the middle of that sphere, is called the Great Circle, and I really did not make that name up. It sounds kind of a little strange, but it's the Great Circle. So if they're asking you to find the area of the Great Circle, it's literally taking a slice out of the sphere right at the belt line. Okay, you'll notice that we have the surface area formula for finding the surface area of the sphere. You have surface area equals 4 times pi times radius squared, where r, of course, is the radius of the sphere. The volume is 4/3 pi r cubed, where again r is the radius of the sphere. I do want to mention that you could also write this as 4 times pi times radius cubed divided by 3, and that sometimes is easier for students to do in the calculator. Just kind of throwing it out there in case one is easier for you than the other. We have two examples down here to demonstrate how to use surface area and volume for a sphere. Example 1 says the diameter of a sphere is 40 feet. So I'm going to put D is equal to 40 feet, so I don't forget what that is. Find the surface area and volume. So the first thing we're going to, and I really want to take a step back up here, notice that both of these formulas for surface area and volume of a sphere, you need the radius. You square the radius in surface area, you cube the radius for volume. So we have the diameter. We want to make sure we're not using the diameter, but we're using the radius, which is of course half of the diameter. And from there, really, it is using these formulas. So I know some of you, I haven't showed all these formulas for finding areas because we've been breaking it down into triangles and so on. But this one is a formula-driven kind of section. So we have 4 times pi times radius squared. That's the area formula for a surface, or for the sphere. We have 4 times pi times 20 squared. And I have 4 times pi times 400. And when you go 4 times pi times 400 in your calculator, you are going to get 5,026.5 feet squared. Okay, so if you were to skin, think of this as like an orange, and skin this orange, flatten it out, and find out how many 1 by 1 feet square feet cover that surface, is going to be 5,026.5 1 foot by 1 foot squares. Now the volume, of course, we're talking about how many volume or cubes can fit within this figure. So we're going to start again with the formula, and I'm going to write it like this: 4 times pi r cubed divided by 3, just because I find, again, for students with the calculator, it seems a little bit easier. So V volume equals 4 times pi times, got a radius of 20 cubed divided by 3. Now this might be right now where you're going, I have a square button, but I do not have a cube button on my calculator, and you probably have something that I call a caret, and I'm going to bring this up here, this idea up here. So to do 20 cubed in many of the calculators, it's going to be where you push 20 and this symbol right here, and then the 3. And that should give you, and you want to test this, make sure you know how your calculator works, but you should be getting 8,000. Now, if you can't find that, you could always go 20 times 20 times 20, because that's what 20 cubed means. So regardless of what kind of calculator you have, whether you have the caret button or a cube button, some calculators, I will say, have this 20. You would put 20, and then you would type in the YX button, and then the 3. That's another button that some calculators have, this one or this one. But again, if push comes to shove, you can just go 20 times 20 times 20 in your calculator and you'll get this 8,000. So just kind of a way of using that calculator sometimes, I don't know, gives the students a little bit of a run for their money. So we have 4 times pi times 8,000. And I'm going to say this, if you can't figure out how to use the calculator, don't stress, just show it to me and I'll show you in class how to use it. There's just some varieties and just takes a little bit to figure it out. Okay, so if you go 4 in your calculator times pi times that 8,000, hit enter, divided by 3, you end up with the approximate value of 33,510.3 cubic feet. And again, this is the amount of cubes that can fit inside of this shape if, in fact, it was drawn to scale, which it clearly isn't drawn at all. So, okay. So that is how you find surface area and volume using, given the diameter. And again, part of the biggest issue with using these formulas is knowing how to use the calculator, especially that cubic button. Okay, so example number 2, it says the surface area of a sphere is 30 pi m squared. So we know that the surface area is equal to 30 pi meters squared. So let's find the volume. Now, I mentioned up here, and I'm going to scroll this back down, I mentioned up here that both of these formulas are driven by the radius. So if you have the radius, then you can find the surface area or volume, much like finding the area of a circle or the circumference of a circle. If you have the radius, it's money. You can do a lot of different things. So we need to get the radius. So we can't find the volume unless we have the radius. So let's first start with the surface area idea. So let's write the surface area formula down, which is 4 pi r squared. We don't know the radius. That's kind of what we're looking for, right? But we do know that the surface area is 30 pi. So let me throw that in. 30 pi equals 4 pi r squared. Now, if you notice this, the surface area is in exact form, in pi form. If we divide out pi on both sides, the pi does divide out. So we end up with 30 equals 4r squared. Now to solve this, I'm going to move this up here, we're going to have to isolate this r squared completely. So we have to divide out by the 4. So we have r squared equals 30 divided by 4 gives me 7.5. And then to undo the square, you would want to square root it. So we want to square root r squared. What we do to one side of an equation, of course, we have to do to the other. So the square and square root undo each other, and we end up with, let me grab it in my calculator here, 2.77 meters. Now, when you square root both sides of an equation in intermediate and advanced algebra next year, they're going to talk about that positive and negative. Oops, I don't want that for sure. The positive and negative. But I'm just, again, we've mentioned this before, geometry, we're talking about lengths, and lengths are positive. So we don't have a negative 2.7 meters as well, we just have 2.7 meters for the radius. Okay, so now let's get the volume formula up here. We have 4 times pi times radius cubed divided by 3. Now that we know the radius, all we're doing is kind of plugging and chugging here, just making sure we're using our calculator right. So we have, if I take this whole top part, so 2.7 cubed times pi times 4, and you do that to make sure that you're getting what I'm getting. So, because again, the biggest issue with this unit is knowing how to use the dang calculator. So 247.34 divided by 3. When I divide that out, I get approximately 82.4. And that, for units, is going to be meters cubed, because again, we're talking about the number of cubes that would fit in a sphere that has a 30 pi surface area. Thank you for joining me. I don't know if I should mention this, but this is MN51. This is the last MN for the year. So congratulations. And if you have any questions on this, we'll answer them tomorrow. Take care.